Hey everyone, this is Alex here, and in this video I'm going to be going over fantasy sports books or DFS books, going over how they work, how their odds work, how their payouts work, and how to use the fantasy tool on SmartStake to actually make money on these apps. So let's get right into it. Alright, so first things, let me just get a little credibility out of the way. This is not to brag, this is just to show you that these strategies work. So this year I've made about 6.5 grand on just under 200 slips. This is definitely my most profitable sports books in terms of ROI. This is just for Pick6 is the only book, the only DFS book in my state, but I've used all the other ones, including PrizePicks, Underdog, Betr, when I travel and stuff. But yeah, this video is going to be mostly about the fixed payout ones, so the ones I just listed, and Pick6. I can go over variable DFS books like Sleeper, something like that, in another video, but this one's going to be about the fixed payout ones. Okay, so what is a fixed payout DFS site or daily fantasy sports site? That just means any book like Pick6 or PrizePicks that has fixed payouts, meaning no matter what 2 picks or 3 picks you make, there's a certain payout that you'll get. And then those payouts are just based on the slip size. So, for example, on Pick6, you take 2 picks that are not in the same game or not correlated. We'll get into payout shifts later, but just think any 2 picks on this site that are not correlated. Any 2 picks is going to give you a 3x payout. Any 3 picks is going to give you 6. Any 4 is going to give you 10x. So there's all different payouts. That 10x payout, so the 3x payout just means plus 200 odds. So if I place this entry, so I'll get to pick it, it would say I have a 2-leg parlay for plus 200. How you get that is 3x is just means 3 times your money. So if I put 10, my total payout, including my wager size, is going to be $30. So that 10, I made 20 in profit for a total of 30. That's just plus 200. Now, when I say that there's no real odds and the only thing that matters is the payout, is, for example, this has a 3x payout. If I were to change Wembanyama to the under points, the payout doesn't change. None of this matters, right? So if we went over to the regular sports book, and if we were to make a 2-leg parlay, let's say Cavs and Magic, that gives you plus 270, right? But if we were to just change this to the other side, Sixers plus 6.5, now we're plus 264. So whereas the DFS site, Pick6 or PrizePicks or Underdog, no matter you take the over under, you're going to get the same payout. Okay, a little bit more on the math side of things so that you guys understand how to calculate your EV percentage and to make sure that your bet is plus EV. So you're basically just worried about the individual probabilities of each of your bets and the payouts. So let's say you have 2 bets that are both 60% chance to hit. So if you do zero point 0.6 times zero point 0.6, that gives your slip a 36% chance of hitting. And as we recall, there's a 3x payout. So 0.36 times 3 is 1.08, which minus 1 times 100 is 8%. That's what this is doing over here. I already plugged in the 60% hit rate. This just means the probability that you land on each of these. So chance of getting none correct is 16%, 1 correct is 48%, 2 correct 36 like we calculated. And the only payout comes from that 36%. And then like we said, you got a 8% EV. So since there's no individual odds for plays, the only thing we care about is this win probability, and it needs to be above a certain threshold to ensure that you're getting a positive EV play, right? Most casual bettors are going on that app, clicking random buttons. You would assume that they have a 50% chance of hitting their slip, or they're a 50% chance of hitting their individual plays because they're just clicking random buttons. So if you were to get 50% on each on a $50 wager, you're expected to lose 12.50. That's an incredibly low EV. There's no positive EV. It's negative EV. And that's how they kind of get you on these. They have super high VIGs usually. So if you're not getting good Now, the most important number to know when trying to find your positive EV plays for your DFS slips is the break-even winning percentage. So that means if all of your plays for a two-pick entry on Pick6, the break-even percentage is 57.735%. That means if all of your individual plays are hitting at a 57.735% rate, that is the exact break-even point in terms of EV. So there's no positive or negative EV. Why this is so important is because if we want to make money long term on two pick entries on Pick6, we need our individual plays to have a higher winning rate than 57.753 or 735. So, right, if we make all these 58, then now we're suddenly positive EV. So that break even rate you have to learn for all your DFS books and the different slip types. So that's where Smart Stake comes in. So if you select Pick6, then you can select your pick type. So before we were here, 57.8. If we go to 3-pick, the reason this is green is because the 3-pick entry is the optimal slip, which just means the lowest break-even rate. So that means on a 3-slip entry, we only need a 55% win rate to break even. So anything above 55, so 56, 57, whereas those plays wouldn't be valuable in a 2-pick entry are now valuable in a 3-pick entry. Okay, so understanding the slip types is also super important. So on Pick6, right, you have your 2-pick entry for 3x multiplier. 3 picks is 6x, 4 picks is a 10x. Once you get into 5, 6, and greater than that, there's multiple payout options. So this means this is a 5-pick entry. If 4 of them are correct, I get my money back. A 1x is simply just you return your wager. And if all 5 are correct, I get a 12x payout. So, and same with 6x. You get 25x for all 6 correct, and you get your money plus half of your money, so 1.5 for 5 correct. There's not an option to choose between what different books will call different things, but usually it's either a power play or a non-insured, which just means you'd get a bigger payout for getting all 6 correct because there's no insurance on this getting 5 correct and getting your money back. But on Pick6, you can't choose. These are just the set options. But on PrizePicks, you can choose between a flex play and a power play. So a power play is that non-insured. So 3-pick power play means I have to get all 3 right to get my money. But once you get into the greater ones, you could pick a flex play. So maybe I'll get some money if I get 4 right, some money if I get 5 right, and more money if I get 6 right, but not as much as I would get if I ran a 6-pick power play, which would mean a way bigger payout because if I get 5 right, I get nothing. So that's kind of just the difference between books. You got to look to see what slip type you're using so that you can get the correct break-even point or break-even rate because they're different for all. And usually books have an optimal slip type. That'll be the ones in green. Here there's a bunch because they're all pretty close, but on Pick6, it's pretty stark the difference. Like 55% versus two mans we saw was almost 58%, which is a big difference. Okay, one thing to watch out for on these books are payout shifts. So payout shifts usually occur when 2 plays that you're trying to bet on are positively correlated, which just means the likelihood or one of them hitting increases the likelihood of the other one hitting. So let's say I'm on receiving yards right here. If I pick all overs, I get a 6x payout. But Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy are on the same team. So taking both of their over receiving yards is not really the best play because on any given play, only one of them can have the ball. So, or one of them can be thrown the ball. So every time they throw to Rashee Rice, the chance of his over receiving yards goes up. However, Worthy's goes down because it's another play that goes by that Worthy doesn't get the ball. So then you would think so these 2 plays when they're both overs are negatively correlated. So if I were to change Worthy to an under, you see this payout goes from 6 to 5.7. They're pricing in that correlation.
because now these two bets are positively correlated because every time Rashi Rice gets the ball and we have Worthy's under, every time he catches it, the chance of this hitting increases and the chance of this hitting increases. So you just have to look out for these payout shifts. Honestly, 0.3% is not too bad for something like this, but sometimes these can get quickly knocked down to like 5.5 or 5.3, and then it kind of takes away any of that EV that you actually had given these were positive EV plays. Another thing to look out for on these DFS books is to look out for one-way markets. So that's just any bet that is only offering one side of the bet. So I could take Travis Kelce to score a touchdown, a rushing or receiving touchdown, but it won't let me take the under. It won't let me take no touchdown. They usually are just going to give you way worse odds on a one-way market because you can't actually see the other side of the bet. So they can hide the fact that they're giving you really bad odds, especially on Pick6 where people are not really familiar with these types of odds anyway, like 1.4x. Then when you parlay it, you see 5.3 and you think that's a good play. But if you were to parlay this on any other site, you're going to get way better odds. I mean, even just quick proof on that. Here's Krosky Merritt and Pacheco to score a touchdown. You're getting plus 691 here. And on Pick6, you're getting a 5.3x payout, which is really only plus 430, which is insanely terrible odds. And this isn't even a plus EV play, so the fair value of this is probably closer to plus 800, and they're giving you maybe half of that. It's just stay away from any of these one-way markets. They have them on PrizePicks too, I know, in the form of the demons and goblins, and pretty sure Betr has something similar. Any bet that you only see one way market, it's going to be the over. They're never only going to give you the under, but just stay away from those. All right, so now getting into more of how to actually build your slips. So I'm gonna build one on Prize or on Pick6 because that's what I have access to. I'm just gonna pick 3 pick entry for now. So here you get all different plays. These are the books that it's devigging it to, and then this is the implied probability of this side hitting given this book's fair value line. So what all that means is Tyrese Maxey under 28.5 points. So here's that line on multiple different books. So here's a few sharp books: Pinnacle, Novig, Bookmaker. All are lean towards the under. Pinnacle very heavily, Novig pretty heavily. This is a good bet that I would place, especially given that a lot of these DFS books have very lucrative boosts. I get multiple boosts every day on Pick6, so if I can get a play down that's positive EV without the boost, that just means the boost is going to take it to like plus 30, 40% EV, which is insane, and which is how I've made most of my money on Pick6 this year just by using all their boosts. So yeah, when you click on these, you can see all the different books, and this percentage is the percent of the under hitting given that book's fair line, and then this box is just going to be put around your sharper books, the ones you really want to key in on. So another play here is Mike Conley under 4.5 assists. I mean, this is another slam dunk play. You want it to be higher than this 55%, so seeing that it's higher than that on a few different sharp books makes it a fantastic play. Okay, so here's the slip I put together, and let me show you how I got there. So first of all, here's what I think is the best play on the board right now, although this has a higher percentage. The reason I didn't pick this one was if you kind of just look at all of the books, right? So these ones are close to 60, but here's some sharp ones, Novig, FanDuel, that are only at 52%, whereas this Mike Conley one, we have two really sharp books, Novig and Pinnacle, both over 55%, which is the number we're looking for. So that was my first pick. My next two, I tried to correlate 2 picks. So the second pick was Anthony Davis, under 11.5 rebounds. Now, here it shows this is 46%, but if you look at this 10.5, that just means that their line they're giving is one lower than 11.5. So the book here, Pinnacle, has 11.5 at 54.7%, but this true probability takes into account other sharp books, and even if their line is bumped lower, it's going to use that number to calculate what their line would be at 11.5. And so it's saying it's close to 55%. So that's good. The third play was Hartenstein over 9.5. Now, I know it's slightly below the true probability, but we're going to more than make up for it. So this is in the same game. Anthony Davis under rebounds, Hartenstein over rebounds. You would say those are correlated, right? Because they play on opposite teams. They're going to be on the floor most of the time at the same time. They play the same position. Only one of them can grab every rebound. So hopefully most of those just go to Hartenstein. But you could see how every time Hartenstein grabs a rebound, it takes one away that Davis could have potentially gotten. So this is another scenario where bookmakers 55%. Pinnacle is a line or is one higher, but so then this true prob is around 55%. So although none of these plays are extraordinarily high EV and way higher than 55%, if we were to put this slip into my little calculator, which I'll do right now. Okay, so here's my 3-leg Pick6 Google sheet that I made. I put in the 3 winning probabilities as stated on SmartStake, and it's telling me I have a 1.6% EV percentage on the 6x payout. So you would think that this play would have a payout shift, but that's where you gotta play around, because they did not give me a payout shift. So we have the Hartenstein over rebounds, Davis under rebounds. There's no payout shift. No matter what I do here, it's not going to change it. Certain plays have payout shifts, certain don't. You kind of got to play around with it to find ones that don't. So even though that 1.6 EV percentage you don't think is as high, the whole idea about these correlation slips is you cannot really calculate the implied probability of these happening when one of them impacts the other. But all we know is that's just going to increase the EV percentage. So we don't know exactly what it is, but I got to lock this in before it moves. But all it's saying is that the EV is higher than that number in our Google sheet is telling us. It's higher than 1.6, and that's all that matters. So if our slip can be EV even without correlation, adding in that extra unknown percentage of correlation is only going to increase our probability of hitting each slip. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much it. I think that the fantasy tool is pretty straightforward. The only things you really need to worry about are this break-even percentage and ensuring that the probabilities of your individual plays are higher than that. If you do have boosts, you don't need to have this be higher than the break-even, because the boost usually makes up for that. But you can still check, like I said, by multiplying the individual probabilities together and then multiplying by the payout. So like if I had these 54.87 times 0.5477 times 0.5477, and I multiplied that by 6, which is the normal standard payout, that is going to be less than 1, which means it's negative EV. However, if I had a 30% boost, that 6x goes to 7.8x, and then it's going to be greater than 1 when you multiply this by 7.8, and that's going to overwhelmingly make up for, this slight negative EV that these are not 55%. I guess the last thing is, I say this in all of my videos, but just never blindly tail anything. Still go in, check to see if you actually agree with this number. See if there's other sharp books that agree. Sometimes if there's just one book that has a good fair value compared to the rest of the market, it's going to kind of skew you away from where the market consensus is, and you're not really getting a true positive EV play. So when you click in, if you see that if let's say this was 55% and the rest were 51, that's something you don't really want to see. That could just mean that Novig is the one that's actually wrong and not Pick6. So yeah, still check every play compared to the market consensus. Just scroll through, see if these are kind of in agreement with the sharp books. If you get 2-3 sharp books that are aligned, I would take the play. But yeah, I would still just make sure it's not just one that you're kind of solely relying on. All right, thank you all for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this fantasy breakdown. I know this is kind of a more general overview of all DFS books, but I can always make book-specific videos in the future, like, tips and tricks for how to win money on Pick6 or on PrizePicks or on Underdog. I could always do those because every book kind of has their own quirks. They're not all exactly the same, so knowing the nuances is important, but not the most important thing. But yeah, again, I hope you all enjoyed. If you have any questions, you could DM me on Twitter here. My handle's keep on betting. Toss me a follow if you want. But yeah, I appreciate you all, and see you in the next one.